Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, Brunning, Bruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box. And you cannot compare them at all, so don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is a mock draft Monday. We have a 4-round rookie mock draft, probably our last rookie mock draft before the actual NFL draft, which is only 10 days away. Dennis, are you getting hyped for the draft?
I'm excited. Though, interestingly enough, last year on the day before round one, Wednesday, was when I had my heart issue. And the day after round one was when the doctor said, I went in for my annual checkup, and the doctor, 15 minutes in, looked up at me and said, "Oh my God, you're an AFib. You got to go to the ER." And then let me leave and drive myself to the ER. So
You probably thought about that afterward.
Yeah, I know. Probably. And I drove myself home and had my wife drive me, but still, it was about 4 miles home. Anyways, it's kind of the draft is now going to be an anniversary for me. Every year that I'm still alive, maybe that'll be my new birthday. This NFL draft will be my new birthday. It'll be my I didn't die day.
It does kind of bounce around every year. So your I didn't die day would be like Easter. You just never know when it's going to happen. Well, in addition to the draft and our mock draft, we did get some news. First, and probably the biggest, is that Jalen Hurts signs a massive 5-year extension. Let me pull up the totals. It was 5 years, $255 million, 179.3 guaranteed. It's the highest average per year now, putting him at $51 million a year. He also gets a no trade clause, which is something that the Eagles had previously not done. So, Dennis, is this a good move for the Eagles? And what does it mean for the rest of the league, particularly our friend Lamar Jackson?
Well, who is it? Adam Schefter and Chris Mortensen both reported that in September, Lamar turned down a $250 million offer with, let's see, the guarantee was so it was basically $5 million less in overall value. And I think it was like $4 million less in guaranteed money. Now my Twitter is running a little slow pulling this tweet up. Let me see if I can get it here. So I get that. I mean, is Lamar better than Jalen Hurts? Let's see. The guarantee, Lamar, was offered 175. Hurts's guarantee was 179.3. So to me, it almost feels like, what we need is like a $256 million with 180 guaranteed to get the Lamar deal done. But then also over the weekend, I don't know if you heard, it came out that they were saying Lamar told the Ravens brass, go get OBJ and DeAndre Hopkins, and then we'll talk. Did you hear that?
No, I hadn't heard that.
When it's they signed OBJ to that $18 million deal that seems crazy.
I mean, it is pretty high for 1 year, but the Ravens seemed kind of desperate, and I do wonder sometimes if they were bidding against themselves because OBJ's been out on the market for a long time and clearly hasn't found much.
Well, I think it's got like 3 void years too. So to spread because I think the cap hit this year is only like $4.5 million or something. So they spread it out with those void years, which to me is stupid. You know, I don't get the whole. I don't understand why the league allows void years like that, but
it's just a way to make the cap unrealistically.
Right.
So probably the only other fantasy relevant piece of news is that Chosen Anderson, formerly Robbie Anderson, signs with the Miami Dolphins. I like that I saw a breakdown of Dolphins receivers that includes Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Chosen Anderson, Braxton Berrios, and forgets that they signed Cedric Wilson last offseason. But do you feel anything about this signing?
Nope. I would hesitate to call it fantasy relevant. Now, if you do roster him, there's going to be a game where he puts up some numbers, but it's going to be probably one of those 3 catches on 5 targets for 89 yards and a touchdown that makes you go, oh, he's going to be the beneficiary of Waddle and Hill getting heavy coverage, but it's not. Don't kid yourself. I think did they re-sign Trent Sherfield? No,
Sherfield went somewhere else.
Okay.
Let me look it up.
I just don't see. I think Anderson is not.
Sherfield went to the Bills.
Okay, that's right. Anderson's, like I said, he's going to have a couple games where he puts up numbers that make you feel like you're, walking through the desert seeing an oasis. If that's the case, sell him if you still roster him. Just take if you can go from selling him for the 312 to selling him for the 311, sell him. Just sell him. Take whatever chance you can. I think we're at the end of the road with fantasy relevant. I mean, I'd rather roster Noah Brown.
Yeah, I don't really get excited about that move either. He had his first year in Carolina was decent, but then he totally faded away in Carolina. When he got traded to the Cardinals, it seemed like the perfect landing spot because they were desperate for wide receivers and he couldn't get involved or really crack the field at all. They seemed happy to let him go, even though they're kind of a mess. It doesn't move the needle a lot for me for Miami. It just does make me wonder about Wilson though, because I thought he actually looked pretty good as the third option for the Cowboys when he went there as a free agent last year, and he couldn't really get involved with them last year, and they certainly have seemed to bring in a bunch of other receivers. Predominantly, though, I think it's going to just be Waddle and Tyreek Hill there in Miami.
Yeah, I feel like Wilson is probably going to be on the move. I think they're going to be looking to do a draft day trade with him. They paid him to come in and be a starter, and then they traded for Tyreek Hill, and bumped him down to the wide receiver 3 spot and the 4 spot he's making too much money. So, maybe he renegotiates to stay there. But I don't know. I'd much rather roster Cedric Wilson than Robbie Anderson.
Indeed. So the last bit of news, you put something on there about a bet. Do you want to elaborate?
Well, I just saw a tweet that said that, Adam Schefter just bet Dan Orlovsky that when Indianapolis makes their pick at 4, that only one QB will be off the board and Indy will basically have their pick. Now, I think that the only way that happens is if the Texans have decided, look, we only want one of these 3 quarterbacks or one of these 4 quarterbacks. And then they just don't draft if Carolina takes their guy and they don't draft one. I don't know. A few weeks ago, we were looking at possibly quarterbacks going 1, 2, 3, 4, and now there's talk only, they may only have 2 going in the top 5.
What? So, which is Adam Schefter betting that they're only one that's going to get taken? Because I think I've
Adam
seen
Schefter told Dan
Orlovsky.
Orlovsky that he said that he bets that less than 2 quarterbacks will be off the board by the time Indianapolis picks at 4. That was Schefter saying it.
So, I mean, I think that presumes Arizona won't be able to find a trade they like at number 3, because supposedly they've had 6 teams inquire, and I don't think you trade into the 3rd spot if you're doing anything but taking a quarterback, really, at this point in time. So that presumes that trade doesn't happen. Houston, I guess you never know. It sure didn't seem like last year they had incredible confidence in Davis Mills. I mean, he got sit down during the middle of that season, came back and started at the end, but they haven't given a lot of indication that they believe him to be the guy. I will say, though, this is one of the reasons I don't like to dump players off my rosters, especially in Dynasty, until you have to at post-draft, because you never know. Like, there could be people out there that set Davis Mills free because it looks like he's going to be irrelevant, and then Houston doesn't take a quarterback, and all of a sudden you realize you just set a starting quarterback free.
But, the thing is so do they would have to then already say, we like Caleb Williams and Drake May better than CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis. We like them better right now. And we saw them also completely screw up the 101 this year. So what makes them think that they can get it next year?
That's the thing. You're also consigning a young coach in D'Amico Ryans, who's trying to build a culture and who's trying to do good things to be. I mean, are you betting that he's only going to win 2 games? Or 3 games or 4 games? Are you betting that you're going to be able to pull off some kind of a trade to, like Carolina did, to move to the 101 if you end up doing it? Because, I mean, look, after Carolina fired Matt Rule, we all fairly well assumed they were going to go into the can for a quarterback, and instead they ended up almost making a playoff run and getting to 7 wins and then having to trade back up. So, is that what you're going to try to do? Because D'Amico Ryans isn't going out there trying to lose, especially after seeing the last 2 years of head coaches not find success on the field and get shipped out after 1 year. I mean, that seems less likely with this hire, but you never know with that front office.
To me, it feels like there's a lot of helmet scouting going on with CJ Stroud. The people are doing Ohio State quarterbacks have never been elite in the NFL. And now they're just saying, well, we're not going to take him that high because it hasn't happened before. When what you have is a really good pocket passer with some good mobility and a good arm, can make the throws, can make the reads. And, it's kind of like Justin Fields said when he was getting knocked for throwing to his first read all the time. He was like, is it my fault that they're always open?
The other question, too, is could the Texans' strategy be that they want to get like a Will Anderson at number 2 and then roll the dice and go with the 3rd, 4th, or 5th quarterback off the board at 112? Because they are one of the few teams that has 2 picks in the top 12. And, I don't know if you are a fan of the movie Draft Day, but sometimes weird things happen in the draft when quarterbacks don't go where you're expecting. I mean, that's what happened with Justin Fields when he ended up landing with Chicago. We thought quarterbacks were going to go in all these places, and they started kind of sliding down the board, and that made an opportunity for somebody later. I suppose that could be a potential strategy if you weren't completely sold. Like, let's say Bryce Young is their guy, and he goes at 1, and they aren't completely sold on the other 3, or do they wait and see what happens and see who they can get at 12? Are they happy taking a Will Levis per se at quarterback? That's the only other, because the Texans are in a rare situation where they have 2 top 12 picks, or, could they try to trade back up into the 8 or 9 range since they have extra picks. I still think the most likely, though, is you have quarterbacks go 1-2.
I agree.
But I guess we shall see.
Do you think that it's most likely that they go 1-2 to Carolina and Houston, though?
Yes. I mean, because Carolina, I think obviously it would be the most, Kevin Costner is your GM thing to have traded all that to go up to 1 to then not take a quarterback. I think that they for sure going up for a quarterback. And Houston, it has seemingly made sense that that's the trajectory they've been on for the last year. And even the offseason moves they've made, they probably still need a receiver, but they have a couple options in the backfield. They got a better pass catching tight end. They've worked on shoring up their offensive line. They got a veteran in Case Keenum to be there. Everything seems to be tracking, both Carolina and Houston. If you were saying the textbook for how you'd play the offseason, if you thought you were about to take a quarterback at the top of the draft, has played out that way. Carolina did the same thing, got a veteran backup, bridge quarterback in Dalton, went and got the pieces around him. So I would be kind of surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not Stroud and Young that are the two quarterbacks that go, because there's been a whole bunch of, I'm pretty sure Orlovsky is the one that's made the case that he thinks the Texans should take Anthony Richardson. And you never know, sometimes teams fall in love with different quarterbacks and you don't exactly know how that's all going to shake out.
I'm going to have to go play with the mock draft simulator tonight and see what it looks like with Houston taking Will Levis and trading up with Arizona and see how far quarterback falls.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only, having not heard the Schefter segment or his thinking, that's the only thing I wonder is if he's thinking, with that they have their sights set on and getting another marquee position filled at 2 and then taking whatever quarterback comes back to them at 12, because it's hard to imagine all 5 of the top 5 quarterbacks would have gone in the top 11 picks, because I don't know that that's the way this draft would shake out. But you're rolling the dice if you don't take, I mean, it's like you see people play this kind of roulette in fantasy startups or in rookie drafts too, where you look at the odds and you're like, well, I really want that player, but I think he'll make it back around to me. How often does that not pan out like you were hoping?
It often not pans out.
Yeah. Well, speaking of drafts, we went ahead and did a rookie mock draft. So let's take a look and pull that up and go through that. We set this one. This is our final 4-round rookie mock draft for the pre-draft period. We did Superflex and tight end premium on this one. There were a couple of slots that got picked by ADP, but I actually was looking at where players fell, and I didn't think that was that unexpected. But Dennis, you took the 101 slot. You took Bijan Robinson. No matter what format, you think he's going 101, correct?
I think 9 out of 10 times or 95 out of 100 times that it's going to be Bijan Robinson. There'll be some wild cards that take a quarterback. If Carolina takes Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, I think that there'll be, a small percentage of people that are like, I got to get a quarterback. It's super flex. Yes, Bijan is good, but he's looking at 6 years max probably. Whereas if I hit this quarterback, I'm looking at 10 to 12 years. And it just seemed like, as people were joining the draft, nobody really wanted to take the 101 because everybody's like, oh, well, 101's Bijan Robinson. And so I took it. I decided I'd go ahead and move up there. And I thought, let me take Bijan and then let me see how the rest of the draft goes for me. What kind of draft can I work out? And honestly, it was kind of a my guy draft. I mean, it's hard to feel like you lost the draft when you got Bijan Robinson too.
So the next four are kind of how you would expect the top five of most drafts to play out. You just don't always know the order. But in this case, we had Bryce Young go at 102, JSN go at 103, then CJ Stroud at 104, and Jahmyr Gibbs at 105. Do you think those are probably the five players that will most frequently go at the top of drafts? In non-superflex, you might not even have two quarterbacks go that early, but even in superflex.
Yeah, in one QB drafts, I haven't been seeing quarterbacks go before the back third of the first round. In superflex, I feel like JSN probably went a little high. That pick was auto drafted before the great Gatsby got back in. So I feel like I've been seeing a lot more people that are, and it feels like it's in mock drafts. I think the people who are drafting Anthony Richardson at 2 are people that are like, you know what? I was in the finals last year, or I won it last year, and I lucked into getting the 102. I've got a good team. I'm going to take a shot on this guy with the most upside in the class. And so that's why I see that. That's why I feel like Anthony Richardson's been going sometimes up at the 102, 103. But overall, I think the top 6 picks are what the top 6 picks are going to be. There'll just be a little bit of shuffling of the order. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba, to me, is clearly the best receiver in this draft. Now, I think he would probably be somewhere in the 5 to 8 or 9 range in last year's class. I think the last couple of years we've just had some better wide receivers come out. This year, I think it's Jackson Smith-Njigba, but because he is kind of a slot possession guy with some outside ability and not a dominant X type of wide receiver, I think that if I had to move anybody back in this draft, it probably would have been Smith-Njigba. I'd probably have him back a couple more spots.
So you kind of mentioned Richardson goes there at 6. I was up at 7. I thought about whether I should take a quarterback, but with those 3 off the board, I took Jordan Addison, who I have as my second wide receiver. That seemed like the best pick. What do you think about that? Would you have taken in a super flex Will Levis there, or is that when you start switching back to position players?
I'm not a Will Levis guy, and so I probably wouldn't have. I ended up, when I'm in that range, I need Levis to keep falling for me to go, okay, well, I've got to take him now. So, like, if he's at the 111, 112, then maybe I'm going, okay. If falls to the beginning of the 3rd round in a 1 QB, then maybe I'll go in for Levis. But honestly, I think I like Hendon Hooker better. And at the price, I like Hendon Hooker a lot better. With the receivers, like, I just released an article with the top 50 incoming rookies, and I have them broken into tiers. And so I've got Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, and Josh Downs in my tier 2. So it's Smith, then Addison, Flowers, and Downs. I actually, Quentin Johnston he dropped a tier for me. I know the people that like him, but he's, I was contrasting him with Rashee Rice, who is 6 foot tall and 200 pounds and plays like he's 6'3" and 220. And Quentin Johnston, who is 6'3" and 218, 214, somewhere in there. And he plays like he's 6 foot and 195. Johnston has a tendency to drop passes. He makes a lot of hay on crossing patterns, but he drops an awful lot of passes on those. He's a body catcher. Phenomenal when he catches it. Now he can take off and go. We've seen that a ton of times. But I just don't know that there's going to be enough consistency there.
Yeah, and if you missed our Friday show, we talked about wide receivers, and Matt was a little bit different than you. He does still have Johnson up there as kind of his wide receiver 3. A lot of people do have him a little higher, so I wasn't so surprised to see him go there. Then we get Levis at 9. And then to end the first round, we get Charbonnet at 10. Zay Flowers goes at 11. And it was tight end premium, so not too surprising to see the first tight end go there at the back of the first round, right? Michael Mayer.
It's not surprising to see the tight end go there. It's just surprising to see that tight end go there.
A lot of people still have him up there.
I mean, he's going to be on the field. I feel like there's definitely some concern that he's going to just turn into a blocking tight end safety outlet, not a real route running threat, not a guy that they're counting on. Now, I don't think anybody expects Dalton Kincaid to be the next Travis Kelce, but he definitely has the skills that he could develop and push for that type. I just don't see that with Michael Mayer. He's a good NFL tight end prospect, but not as good of a fantasy tight end prospect.
So then at 201, you end up taking Josh Downs. Was there any consideration for you to consider Kincaid there since he was available and it is tight end premium?
I actually considered Kincaid and Hooker both because it is a super flex and a tight end premium. But in the end, I went back to my tiers. Now, Kincaid would have been a little bit more of he'd have been more likely for me because I do have Kincaid in the same tier as Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison and Josh Downs. I also have Zach Charbonnet, Tyjae Spears, Tank Bigsby, and Will Levis and Dalton Kincaid in that tier. But I just like when I looked at the receivers, when Johnston went and he's in my next tier down, I felt like I needed to go ahead and take the guy that I have in the tier above that most of the guys have gone. And I really debated a guy, probably the guy I considered the most there was Tank Bigsby. He's an old school kind of 2.5 down running back. I think he can develop his pass catching. He caught, I think, 60 passes in college, but a lot of them were just sort of the check down variety. And so he didn't do a lot of route running, but I do think there is an opportunity for him to be a viable pass catcher in the NFL, so long as he's an effective blocker, and he's got the size for it. He's got the size to be a bell cow. So I really thought about taking Spears, and then I thought, I need to probably go wide receiver, upside, and that's why I went Downs.
So then continuing in the top half of the second round, we get Jalen Hyatt at 202, Devin Achane at 203. Then we get our fifth quarterback, Hendon Hooker, going there at 204. Interestingly, that spot takes two quarterbacks in a row with Stroud and then Hooker. And then we get Dalton Kincaid going at 5 and Tyjae Spears at 6. So what do you think of the top half of the second round there? Do you like the placement for Hendon Hooker?
I think that's if you want him, you're probably going to have to take him in the first half of the second round. Occasionally, I think he'll drop into the second half. And I think he's a really good prospect, and he's gonna be the guy that comes in with the least amount of pressure on him. And there's something to be said for that. Some of these other quarterbacks are going to come into the league, and the expectations are going to be so high. Hooker can come in, he can learn the offense. He's probably going to go to a team that has a starter, and maybe the starter's has 1 year left on their contract, or maybe the sun is setting on their career. I like what Hooker brings to the table. He's just going to have to work out, can he transition from that spread offense where they did the triple stack on one side and then his job was just to pick the whichever one of the three guys was open when they split up.
So looking at the back half of the second round, we had kind of a run here on running backs.
Big old running back runs what we had.
So I took Tank Bigsby when it came up to me at 207. Then we saw Zach Evans, Roschon Johnson, Sean Tucker, and Kendre Miller go. And then the round closes out with Marvin Mims. What did you think? Any of the picks there stand out to you?
Sean Tucker has not been getting a lot of love. I know he just went back for a medical recheck at the combine, and he's been cleared. I don't know if that means he's going to try to squeeze in a workout before next week or not. But there's basically, it's kind of gotten narrowed down that people are saying, Sean Tucker needs to go to a Kyle Shanahan offense because that's really the only that's what his style and his abilities are suited for. We'll see if that's true. I'm curious, when you looked at Bigsby there, were there any of those running backs that came after you, because they went 4 straight running backs after you, that you were debating against Bigsby with?
I mean, I thought about Roschon Johnson. I actually thought about going wide receiver again. I probably would have taken Tillman if I would have gone wide receiver, because I have him above Mims. So I did consider doing that, but I thought it was worth a shot on Bigsby. I'm one of those people that probably locks in my spot a little bit more once I know what team players are on. I have an idea of players I like in a range, but in terms of when I'm live drafting, path to touches makes a little bit of a difference for me. I was surprised, though, that Tillman lasts all the way to you at 301, because I did consider taking him right there.
I froze.
Well, I just said I was surprised Tillman lasted to 301 because I did consider taking him right there.
So to be fair, I was surprised Tillman lasted to 301 because when I took downs, I was like, man, should I just get my guy and draft Cedric Tillman? Because I really like Tillman. I like Tillman over. If I'm looking, if my choices are Tillman and Hyatt, I'm taking Tillman. And so I really debated, but I just couldn't take him over downs. And so I had resigned myself to the fact that he wouldn't be there at the 301. And then to watch it go running back, running back, running back, running back, running back, it was just like, wow. And then Mims, I like Mims. I think Mims brings a lot to the table, but Mims is 177 pounds and Tillman is 214, 6'3" versus 5'11". I have a type and Tillman fits it. And so I was excited to see him come back to me at the 301. Now, if Tillman hadn't made it back to me, Mims probably would have been my pick.
So the rest of the third round, we see 5 more tight ends go, which makes sense given the format we get.
We had 3 different runs. We had like running back run in the second round, a tight end run in the third round, a quarterback run in the fourth round.
Yeah, so we have Luke Musgrave go at 302, Darnell Washington at 303, then running back Dwayne McBride at 304, Kayshon Boutte finally going at 305. He feels like a guy that continues to fall throughout this process. Israel Abanikanda goes at 306. I went back to receivers with Rashee Rice at 307. I thought about Will Mallory, but then he comes a little bit later. We get Tucker Kraft here at 308, Eric Gray at 309, Sam Laporta at 310, Will Mallory at 311, and then Jaden Reed at 312. I mentioned, when I took Rice, I considered Mallory because of the format, but I just decided I liked the value of Rice there a little bit better. But how do you feel? We get no quarterbacks in this round, so it kind of makes sense. After the top 5, there's a bit of a lull before people are going back to that quarterback well. But what did you think of the picks here in the third round?
So that's a lot of tight ends that aren't going to be fantasy viable. And so, like, if I'm
year one anyway,
if I'm sitting in my draft and I see 5 tight ends go in the third round, I'm going to immediately start trying to trade for fourth round picks. I mean, that's just I'm at the point in my fantasy career right now where if you're not elite, and to be fair, I think there's some good tight ends in this class. I just don't think any of them are elite. I'm just not going to draft him. I'll wait and I'll trade for a tight end that I know I'm going to get production out of. And these 5 tight ends, there's a couple guys that might have some fantasy value, but will it be consistent? I feel like Musgrave is probably the most viable of them. I'm concerned about Darnell Washington. A lot of his stuff, he ended up just kind of being, blocking and then floating down the seam a little bit. He did do some route running, and he showed some athleticism at the combine, but I just feel like he's going to end up spending him and Michael Mayer are going to be doing the same kind of thing an awful lot. And it's not scoring fantasy points because we don't play in a point per block league.
Well, I mean, you don't. Maybe somebody does.
Maybe. I like McBride and Ibanakanda and Gray, the running backs that went in this round. I think this is a great opportunity, a great spot to take some shots. McBride, he's a 2-down guy, but he's got great lateral movement and nice burst. But he only caught 5 passes in college, and he played at UAB. So it wasn't like he was playing, the upper echelon of college competition. Abanikanda has the explosiveness that maybe Gray or McBride don't. He also has tiny hands. He's a little bit more athletic kind of than Matt Jones was a few years ago that had those tiny hands. I think Abanikanda is a guy that could be a 4th, 5th round pick and find some opportunity because of his explosiveness. He also could be a 4th or 5th round pick and end up being a kick returner because of that explosiveness. I like Rice. I just think he needs to become more refined as a route runner and stop trying to play like Mike Evans and overpower people. He's not in whatever conference that was that SMU is in anymore. Is that the Big 12?
Yeah, I'm not sure what.
He's going to be going against some substantially better players, and he's going to have to learn to use. He's going to have to flesh out his skill set, his route running ability, when to use his speed, when to make nice cuts. I like Rice. I think he's a great upside in the 3rd round. That's what you want, and I think Rice provides a lot of upside there.
So even in tight end premium, though, you wouldn't take tight ends?
Well, all the tight ends get the premium, not just the bad ones. So yeah, they're all gonna move up some, but it isn't like I don't see myself starting, Tucker Kraft over, Tyler Boyd.
You never know. Never know. Well, in the 4th round to start, you get Jonathan Mingo. Were you pretty excited to see him fall there for it?
I like it. It was almost, if Tillman hadn't have been there and been a smash pick for me, Mingo would have been in the conversation for me. I love Mingo. I think he's going to be great. I've got Mingo in the same tier with Mims, Kendry Miller, Michael Mayer, Roschon Johnson. So for him to be there at the beginning of the 4th round, that feels like it could be a home run pick. And again, he's the big wide receiver of this class.
So you and I in this draft, it was a super flex and tight end premium. Neither of us took a quarterback or a tight end. And for me, it was just where I was falling, I didn't like any of the values for what those positions were left. We do see 4 more quarterbacks go here in this last round. Tanner McKee goes at 403, Stetson Bennett at 405, Max Duggan at 8, and Dorian Thompson Robinson at 11. Is this about the round in a super flex where you might take a shot on one of those second tier quarterbacks? And if you were, which one guy would you be targeting?
I'm a Stetson Bennett guy.
So I would have probably taken Bennett if he fell to me. He goes 2 picks in front of me. That was the one that I thought, if he's still there, I'm going to take a flyer.
So honestly, if the draft had kind of went like I thought, Tillman wouldn't have been there for me at 301, and I probably would have taken Mingo. So Mingo would have been gone, and at 401, I would have taken Bennett. But it went to where I got Tillman and Mingo in the third and the fourth. To me, Bennett's got a couple options in front of him. He could be Chase Daniel, or he could be Drew Brees. That's a wide spectrum. They're both short guys that have suspect arm strength. Bennett actually had the same pass velocity at the combine as Will Levis. The question is when he throws like that, does he maintain his accuracy? He's a gutsy player. He's a winner. He fights hard. Like him and Max Duggan kind of have this intangible thing. Like Bennett was on the Georgia team, and then he left because I don't remember if it was academics or he just wasn't getting enough playing time or didn't feel like he was going to make it. And he went to junior college, and then he came back, and then he won the starting job, and he took him to 2 national championships. There's some moxie there. He's mobile enough. I think he ran a 4.67 40, so he can get out and out of the pocket. At 5'10.5" or 5'11", there's going to be some opportunities there. So will he be able to get the passes where they need to be? Duggan, on the other hand, has a lot of that intangible stuff. He lost the job in camp. The other guy got hurt. He came in. He took the team to the national championship game. The bugaboo with Duggan is that he just doesn't have the arm. He's not accurate, and he doesn't have a strong enough arm. I think he'll get into a camp, and he might make a practice squad, but he's more likely to end up in the USFL or XFL, I think.
Well, any other things stand out to you in this 4-round rookie mock? Did it just make you excited for actual rookie drafts?
Well, it's interesting. At the end of the 12th pick in the 4th, Chase Brown went, and he still has some people believing in him. And, he had a good year at Indiana statistic-wise, put up a lot of yards, scored a lot of touchdowns. But he's just been falling hard since the Senior Bowl. He had a good combine, but when the pads were on at the Senior Bowl, he just didn't handle practice very well. He got pushed around. He made mental errors. It'll be interesting to see where he goes. He's 5'9" and 206 or 209 pounds in there. He's got enough size to be, a 14 carry a game back with a couple pass receptions, but he can't block. He can't pass block to save his life. And so I don't know how much that's going to hurt him. I'd have probably went A.T. Perry over Raheem Jarrett. Again, Perry's a big guy. Perry's issues, he often, he makes amazing catches look easy and easy catches look amazing sometimes. It's sometimes when he should it's right in his hands. It's, he's bobbling it all around and whatnot. But I like Perry. He's got speed. He's for his size especially. So I don't have a lot of qualms other than I probably wouldn't have taken any of the other 3 quarterbacks. I think if Thompson Robinson can develop some accuracy, he's the type of guy that I think a team like Baltimore brings in as a backup because he's got that mobility that you don't have to change the play style behind Lamar Jackson, or Philadelphia brings him in because you don't have to change a lot of the play style because of the mobility that they have. So I feel like there's a place in the NFL for him, but I feel like he ends up being sort of that guy you only pick up as a handcuff.
Well, that's going to wrap up our mock draft Monday. As I mentioned, only 10 days away from the regular NFL draft. So we'll be back on Friday. I think Matt will be back with us. We'll be looking at our top 25 combined rankings, Superflex rankings, as we head into the draft. It'll be interesting to see if any of those things kind of shift around for us as the draft unfolds. And then I think we're planning to do a mock draft of a different kind where the three of us try to do an NFL mock draft for next Monday's show on the cusp of the actual draft. But until then, Dennis, we've been restored on our what was once old is new again for our platform. So what do you suggest that people do?
Do us a big old favor. Go subscribe. We really, we need to build a subscriber base back up now that you can find us again. Give us a rating. Give us a review. We could use some love.
And like I said, we'll be back on Friday. Until then, keep getting that draft fever going. Have a good one.